Welcome to Robotics Roundtable on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM, featuring area robotics teams and special guests in the robotics world. Robotics Roundtable is supported by Berrien Springs Public Schools, together inspiring students to think, learn, achieve, and care in a global community. Cook Nuclear Plant. Explore careers at aep.com/careers. South Haven Public Schools, inspiring success in learning, leadership, and life. And Lakeshore Public Schools, supporting and offering STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, grounded in tradition, committed to excellence.
Hello and welcome to Robotics Roundtable on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM. I'm your host, Tim Denai. We meet here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. to discuss high school robotics with area teams from Southwest Michigan. You can also catch any Robotics Roundtable discussion you missed on WSJM.com as a podcast, or see the video of our discussion on WSJM's Facebook page. Welcome everybody to Robotics Roundtable. So we are not meeting in a studio this year, and because of that, it's given us the advantage to reach out to a much wider area than Southwest Michigan. So we've cast our net pretty far and wide. We've changed time zones. So we're speaking with a couple of people who are west of us, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And when they introduce themselves, I'd like them to give me a name, years of being involved with FIRST Robotics specifically, and their professional career. And here in Robotics Roundtable, we always say ladies first. So Melissa?
Yeah, hi, glad to be here, Tim. My name is Melissa Smith. I am a user experience researcher at YouTube, I guess specifically at Google, and working on YouTube Music. And I've been involved at FIRST this is my 21st year. I started as a FLL student in middle school and then did FRC. And people always joke that there's no exit strategy for FIRST, and I am an example of that. I literally just haven't stopped since I was, a sixth grader.
So can I ask without fear of getting hurt, 21 years, how old are you?
I'm 31. So I started
31. Wow. I have concert shirts that are 31 years old. So I just, and where are you located at?
Yeah, I live in San Francisco, and I primarily volunteer now as a head referee for the San Francisco and Silicon Valley regionals, as well as at championship. So I'm one of the yellow shirts done on the field during a normal season.
Very good. We'll talk a little bit about refereeing. I want to come back to that a little bit, and then we'll let our other guest introduce himself.
Yeah, so my name's Steve Peterson, and I'm relatively new to the program compared to Melissa. I've only been involved for 10 years, and it's primarily as a mentor and an event volunteer. And I got involved in the program when my kids came home from school and said, "Hey, Dad, will you come help program the robot?" And that's related to my professional career. I currently work at Microsoft, and the area that I work in is actually around meeting recording. So if you were using Microsoft Teams and doing a meeting recording, kind of recorded meetings is one of my specialties at the company. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of Minnesota, and I actually work remotely. I live in Minnesota and manage a team that's located in Redmond, Washington.
Okay.
And my reason for being involved in the program is that when I was in high school, there was actually a Boy Scout Explorer post that I went to in the town that I grew up in, which is the town I live in today. And there were adults who kind of taught kids how to program in that Boy Scout Explorer post. That connection to those adult mentors in that program led to my first job, where I did software testing, starting as a senior in high school. Then I continued working in that job in college, and it was my entree to my first full-time job after college. So if I look at this group of mentors who ran this Boy Scout Explorer post teaching kids how to program, that's really the kind of on-ramp that I had to my career. And so my involvement in FIRST is about kind of basically paying that forward. So,
yeah, I like that. I mean, there's a couple things there you mentioned, Steve, and we talked a little bit beforehand about topics I wanted to cover. And I've been involved as first of all, we get involved as a parent because our students our children are involved, and you become a part of it. Whether that's I've done hockey coaching, soccer coaching, been a scout leader. Some of those things I never participated in as a child, but I was a dad. And that's on the dad checklist of things that you have to do.
yeah.
But then what came about because of that was still some of the cherished moments for me are when kids that I've coached 20 years ago, 20 years ago, Melissa, they call you coach still when you see them. There's that connection. But then I also see how those students have developed from those young experiences networking that has reached out, which is a part of what's involved with FIRST and other organizations. Scouting's definitely one, Junior Achievement, Project Lead the Way. There's all kinds of those events. Melissa, aside from FIRST, did you have any other experiences? And even if you didn't, have you recognized that as a student and now as a volunteer?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was involved in Girl Scouts and did that all through my, my childhood as well. And
I've had your cookies. Those are good, by the way.
Oh man,
continue.
Yeah, and just definitely, I think a lot of these programs, the benefit from them, I think it's really easy for people to look at like, oh, look at this tangible skill that you're getting. But I think a lot of the skill comes around to like learning how to work with people, learning how to work with teams. And these are the things that I always like advocate for with even FIRST. Like, yeah, these kids are learning how to program and, build mechanical, devices. And these are all like very technical skills. But I feel like the more important skills are things like learning how to have like a project deadline and work backwards, learning how to like deal with a lot of solutions and figuring out how to like pick the best one, learning how to lose and like being able to like pick up and like continue going on, like whether it be a match or an entire competition. I think there's like, these are skills that like, if you can learn that earlier in life, whether it be through like robotics or something else, I think that becomes such a benefit for you further down the road. And of course it's fun. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Steve, you want to add anything onto that?
Well, I think one of the opportunities that you have when you're doing mentoring in both in the FIRST program and in these other programs is that you can help people kind of navigate situations where maybe their family hasn't dealt with it before. And I'll give you a concrete example of that. Is we had a student on our team who really wanted to go to the College of Science and Engineering at the University of Minnesota, and that was kind of his goal. And he didn't make the cut originally to be admitted to that college. He got admitted to the university, but he couldn't get into that college. That's the engineering school. It's one of the most difficult schools at the university to get into. And because of my experience with the university, I was able to kind of guide him and his family to be like, don't feel bad about that, because here's another path that you can take where you can start going to the university, take exactly the same classes. And here's a path that within a year you can be in that college if you do good work at the university. And that was really something where my knowledge of how the university worked, I could help this family turn this disappointing thing into like, okay, here's this thing, we know our son can do this, and go do that. And he was successful at doing that, and graduated 2 years ago with a degree in computer science from CSE there. So that's the sort of thing, when you're kind of pairing mentors and students, is oftentimes you bring a set of experiences maybe that the student or the student's family hasn't had before, and you can really give them some help in terms of guiding them in a particular direction that they might want to go but not know how to get there.
Yeah, I would say also too, I mean, sometimes it's just the fact that a conversation happens, and you do it out of not, hey, I want to get you in, but I want to clue you into a way that you might be able to, some additional piece of information that the family didn't have. Right. And in some cases, there's some of these students that we're working with in a lot of these programs, FIRST being one of them, where some of these students, their parents did not have the college experience or go through and do that. I know my own personal life, my parents did not go to college, so I kind of navigated a path, and then I made decisions at the point in time where I was going through school. I did a 2-year degree and I wanted to get into the workforce, and that worked for me. But then I was very much of the opinion, I want my children to go through a 4-year experience, and there's a lot of growing up that has to happen that isn't anything to do with schooling. So sometimes we're involved with students who are in those paths. Have you bumped into that at all, where you've had conversations to open somebody's eyes? Melissa, Steve referenced one, but have you had any experiences like that?
Well, I think that especially as a head ref, I get to see a different kind of interaction with the students. I think they typically are coming to me when they're very upset about something, or or potentially very happy, at the end of the competition. So for me, I think it's always enlightening and seeing like over the course of like typically 4 years, like a student who comes to see you as a freshman and they're like super shy and they're scared and they don't really know what's like how to like have a meet your eyes, or they're just like so terrified. And by like, by the time they come to you as a senior 4 years later, they're just like very more candid and a lot more comfortable, and like being able to ask like solid questions and like actually have like a very like real, like seeing that maturity that grows over time. And that's my form of like seeing like the evolution and the impact of the program that I really love. The other story I have is actually related to like my favorite first moment. I'll just talk about it now since it's a little bit relevant. And it was at championships. So I've had ref at champs 2 times now, which is like a whole nother kind of pressure, just because like now you have like, you know, the best teams in the world or a lot of rookie teams. It's a very widespread there. But it's a very global audience. So we have lots of different, you know, teams from different countries and cultures. And at the end of one of the competitions, I was very like, you know, it's very overwhelming, very stressed out, very kind of exhausting day. And then this mentor came up to me, and he was a coach from Turkey. And he was like, hey, I just want to shake your hand and just say thank you so much for being here. Not just for like being a good ref, but also just being as a representative for all the students on my team, like the boys, but also the girls, because they're not used to seeing like women in positions of power related to like science and tech. And I was just so like humbled, and I don't know, it just felt like it kind of took me out of myself a little bit. It was just like, wow, yeah, you're exhausted and tired, but also like, you know, what you're doing here matters. And for me, it's just like a few days out of the year to just have fun and connect with students. But, you know, from the other side, it's like, oh, wow, this is someone who is just like, you know, a woman who's involved with tech and science and like in a position of power, which is not like something that I guess they're used to seeing in that culture. So that was like really of a really beautiful moment, and something I always think about when I think of like a powerful, the impact of FIRST and how it is changing lives.
And I would say it's also, when you say you're at a robotics competition, somebody may never ever think that that kind of experience happens. But Steve, have you witnessed either personally or seen that, where it's those kind of things where there's just a quiet conversation that happens? I know I've had that opportunity. Have you experienced that, where it's somebody will come up and acknowledge your time, or just the impact that you had without even you trying to have that kind of an impact?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. It's hard for me to pick out particular moments around that, because you know, like Melissa, you know, I stand kind of at the center of the field in my volunteer role, and so people have to kind of work a little bit to kind of come seek us out and come talk about things. It's not, you know, we typically aren't kind of orbiting around in a super accessible way. But
That's
you
true.
know, hearing from both from students and from adult mentors or parents about the impact of what we're having on kids, that's really one of the most rewarding parts of the program. The other thing that's really interesting about it is getting people from kind of the bigger world to understand the impact that robotics is having. And so I was at the Iowa regional a couple of years ago, and convincing the governor of Iowa to come out and dance the baby shark dance with the students. You know, that's the sort of thing that you're, you know, when these, in particular, you know, the regional planning committee will get dignitaries to come and they're not quite sure what to do. And if the people at the side of the field oftentimes will drag the dignitaries out and kind of get them in situations where they get to understand the fun part of the robotics competition as much as the kind of learning and developing part of it.
Yeah, as a judge advisor, the best thing that I can do at our event is I can put the teams at ease and just let them know so I have a goofy hat that I wear, and there's not a student that I walk by that I'm not, you know, different time, but that I'm fist bumping or high fiving and such. And, you know, so those are a lot of the tangible things, just that they get to see us having fun, and allows them to go, hey, it's okay to have fun. And when they're doing that as a group, it helps the overall environment of every one of the competitions.
Right, and that's something that, you know, when if you have a good combination, in my event role is the FTA, who works very closely with the head ref, and the combination of them oftentimes with students that come to the side of the field with questions, you know, we can make the difference between a really stressful situation and something where they get the answer to the question. Maybe it's not the answer that they were looking for, but they understand what the decision-making process was behind it, and leave feeling respected. And so kind of helping people kind of manage their emotions in that situation and point them in the right direction. That's something that when you work alongside the field for a while, you learn how to do. And when you're paired with the head ref, you know, that's something that sometimes you're tag teaming that a little bit, where the head ref will talk to somebody for a little bit, and then FTA will talk to them to get them to understand what the situation is and what outcomes they can expect from a particular request that they have.
Yeah, it's a whole different level. I mean, me being a judge advisor, there's a whole different world that I interface with. And I like hearing this from you guys, and it's a whole different perspective. But I think still the overall benefit is every one of us enjoys it. And there's memorable things that we'll take away from the events that we'll recall for years. So the conversation has been great. I really enjoy it. And I've said this a couple of times on our show. Great conversation is good. The downside of it is it goes by fast. So I want to take time to thank both of you for taking time to be on the show. That's much appreciated. In this year where we're not meeting in public spaces and having competitions, you guys have stepped into an additional role and you're helping to judge. And I'm personally thankful for you because you guys have done a great job with that. And thank you for all that you continue to do for FIRST. I look forward to finishing our role this year and then seeing each other in future in person. So again, thank you guys for being here. This is Tim Denai with Robotics Roundtable. If it's Tuesday at 6 p.m., it's Robotics Roundtable here on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM. We'll be back in just a few moments and we'll meet Robotics Zone out of the Niles community area. Hello and welcome to Robotics Roundtable on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM. I am your host for the evening, Tim Denai. We meet here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. to discuss high school robotics with teams from the Southwest Michigan area. You can also catch any Robotics Roundtable discussion you missed on WSJM.com as a podcast or see the video of our discussion on WSJM's Facebook page. Today, we are joined by Robotics Zone from Niles. They have participated in both the world of FIRST Robotics and VEX Robotics. We are excited to have them here today. Welcome, Robotics Zone. And you guys can wave to the camera. There we go. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. It's a short drive to meet in a virtual space as opposed to driving down to Niles. So even though it's nicer weather, we don't mind that trip now. But we want to thank you guys for taking time to join us. And if you could, let's go around the virtual room and meet who you are. Give me name, school affiliation, grade level, and how long you've been involved with robotics. And we always start with ladies first. So we're going to go with Madison.
I'm Madison Millar. I'm a senior at Niles High School, and this is my 5th year doing robotics.
Excellent. Lily?
My name is Lily Jackson. I am a senior at Niles, and I have been doing robotics for 5 years.
Excellent. Still sticking with the students, Daniel.
My name is Daniel Brennan. I'm a senior in high school, homeschooled, but dual enrolled through SMC. And this is my 6th year of robotics.
Okay. What are you dual enrolled in at SMC? What are you doing class-wise? What type of classes?
General ed classes right now.
Okay. And we always have to have somebody who's in charge, who keeps track of the youngins. And who would that be for us today?
Hi, I am Cheryl, and I've been with Robotics Zone officially our first year as a nonprofit as Robotics Zone. We took over the organization last year, me and Marla Brennan. And I've been involved with robotics since my son joined in 8th grade. So we're talking 7 years ago now.
Okay.
So been around for a little while.
Excellent. And let's talk a little bit about, I mentioned it early on, participating in VEX and FIRST Robotics. There's different robotics. There's a lot of different organizations even outside of that. Your group has participated in both FIRST competition and VEX competition. Can you give us just, Daniel, I think you've done both, correct?
Yeah.
So give us a little bit of what's the same and what's a little bit of difference between those two organizations and the two competitions.
One of the biggest differences that I've noticed is the time frame that the competition actually goes on. Whereas with FIRST, you have the 6-week build period and then 2 competitions scheduled. VEX goes year round and you can schedule as many competitions as you want. And also is kind of a lot more free with the materials you can build with, whereas VEX, you're basically limited to what they sell or allow.
Okay. So I've heard before, like having that 6-week period or whatever the build time is in the FIRST world helps people understand a timeline and working with that. still in the VEX world, I would imagine you need to develop a timeline that you're working with, and maybe even Lily or Madison can talk about timeline and what you're doing with the design concepts with a VEX robot. Lily or Madison, maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, we always want to have the robot done before competitions. So we always need to make sure that we have time to build the robot and then also program it, get autonomous and everything ready for that. And here we don't meet during the summer, even though a lot of teams do. So we only have, usually for the first competition, about 2 months to work on the bot.
Okay. And Lily, I mean, so who coordinates or says, hey, we really need to have a timeline to get things done? Is that mentor led, or do the students take that on upon themselves to do?
So it's kind of a mix of both of us. Our mentors will definitely keep an eye on us and make sure we're keeping on track with our timeline, but we typically set it up for ourselves. It also just depends on when the first competition we're signed up for happens and how long we have to build and program all of it.
Okay. And so the year of 2020 and into 2021 has added this new wrinkle of things that we have to work with. Talk about, how are you guys meeting? Did you do anything through meeting in virtual spaces? Are we meeting together as a team, and protocols that you've had to work to develop for doing that? Daniel, how about that?
For us, it hasn't been too big of an issue. We only were locked out when like schools were completely shut down for like the first few weeks of actually being able to build. So beyond that, we've just been social distancing when we can and wearing masks. But we actually have one member on our B team who is one of the at-risk, or his family's an at-risk.
Okay.
And so we had to kind of figure out with them how to do it all virtually, or like handing the bot off to each other at like different times of the week.
Okay. And then Cheryl, is there anything from the mentor side of things where that was maybe a concern? How are we going to do this? You want to be able to work with the students. And I think not just working with the students, but being there with them. But, how did you come up with a plan that you felt was safe for the students and for you, and so everybody can continue to enjoy the experiences?
Yeah, well, we definitely had to follow the local school district's COVID guidelines, which we're in a Brandywine school building. So they kind of set the standard for us. And then the kids that were available, as long as they were available to be in the building, we just made sure they followed the protocol. And the one gentleman that was not allowed to be out and join the group in person, we just, lots of communication. The kids are on Discord and they talk a lot, just in communication with his mom, and lots of running back and forth. The bot would be here, and then we would let him know it was ready for him, and they would come pick it up. And so, yeah, I mean, we just adjusted like everybody else has in this new world. So just what we could do to keep the team moving forward and everybody being able to participate.
Yeah, you want to keep the enthusiasm going from whatever success you've had in the past. And especially if you guys are seniors, it's a whole different world. You've been doing this for a while, and you really you want to go on a enjoying the moment and good memories that you're building, for the rest of your life. So, and I think regardless if it's a first competition or a VEX competition, there's still this point where we have whatever our task is that's in front of us, and we have to figure out a way to accomplish our task. So Daniel, tell me a little bit about, how do you find out what your task is? Is there a reveal of the game, and what time frame is that revealed in?
The structure of the game and everything like that is similar to first, where you have the reveal period and then the whole buildup is to get to Worlds. But the difference is with VEX, once the final matches for the World Championship are played, they immediately go into the game reveal for the next year. So that day pretty much. And then normally for us, we take like a couple weeks to maybe like a month break to kind of see what comes out in the next few weeks before we start actually planning stuff out.
So as you start to look at something, I mean, just out of curiosity, is it, if we're fortunate enough to be at a world championship, and then there's the reveal of the game, and you look at your existing robot and go, hey, we could reuse some of this, Or do we go down the path of going, we really need to brainstorm in a whole new way? Madison, maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, usually our first step is to just go on YouTube to see what other teams are doing, to just
Okay.
kind of get ideas and stuff. I mean, we always want to try and do our own thing, but if there's something that works, we want to try and use that as well.
Okay. And then what's the size and scope of the field of play and the size of the robot that we're talking about? Madison?
The robot usually has to be within an 18 by 18 by 18 cube.
Okay. And the field of play, Lily, how big is the field of play there, or the field that you're participating in?
I'm not sure how big the tiles are, but there's a
Rough area.
Yeah, it's so we have just tiles that are 36, and it's just 36 tiles. I'm sorry, I have actually no idea how big that field is.
You should have just went with that. Can somebody help her out?
Our fields are 12 foot by 12 foot.
Okay. We don't want to have you struggle, Lily. So
Yeah, I was trying, but I couldn't make the words up.
That's okay. We'll get to the programmer. So you were probably already thinking of how I can program this, and I really don't care what the space is. I know I need to get the task done. So that size and scope, I'm just curious, I'm familiar in first where it's 3 versus 3, alliance versus alliance. Are we just a single robot that's doing skills in the Vex world in that small space, or what do we have, Daniel?
No, so with Vex, it's only 2 team alliances. So there's 4 bots on the field instead of 6.
Okay. And are they segmented off into their areas that they're working in? Do they interact with each other and kind of compete against each other while still trying to achieve goals?
Yeah, so with more of the recent games, they've started putting in an autonomous line down the middle of the field, so you can't cross and mess up the other team's auton. So that's the only real point that they're actually separated.
Okay.
And driver control starts, then it's all over the field, kind of a free-for-all.
Okay. And I would imagine the higher you go in a particular, if you're at an event, the closer you get to the finals or you get closer to world, that free-for-all frenzy starts to happen a little bit more, I would assume.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. So Madison, let's talk a little bit about, okay, now the game's been revealed and we start to conceptualize and, what we want to do. We brainstorm as a team. Do we start looking at how are we going to lay out the build of this first? Is that the first thing we do? Do we send Lily off and say, go create a program and we'll create a robot and maybe the two things will work together? How do we do that?
So we always have to build the robot first because it's really hard to create a program when the programmer doesn't have anything to actually do anything off of. So it's we really rely on the builders first, and then they have to figure out something for the programmer to do.
So Lily, during that point, do you have input as the programmer? And, as they're building, I'm looking for this type of sensor because that feedback can help me as a programmer. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I have been programming probably about 3 years, and I'm not the best. So I haven't really been able to use sensors because it's really hard to learn, and they've changed the programming on me a couple of times. So I have to relearn every year. Mm-hmm. But when we usually start with a drivetrain, and I'm just like, okay, we got to figure out what ports we want to plug them into and what I have to program that for. And then from there, we just have to figure out, so our limit is 8 motors. And so we have to figure out where we want to put them and how we want them to run. And this year, I programmed I gotta remember what it's called, the arcade drive. That's what it is. That's what I programmed. And it was a little bit different from the previous years.
So where did you gain the knowledge in how to program that arcade drive? Was that just trial and error? Was that YouTube? Was that team members as a resource?
So eventually I did have one of our other team members help me out on that, but I did try and learn it from a website that I think Madison had found, because I was looking and I couldn't find anything, and Madison found something. But then one of our other team members ended up figuring out how to do it. And he was like, here, this is how you do it.
So Cheryl, as a mentor, watching the students go through this process where it's trial and error and learning things, how difficult is it to not jump in and kind of try to get them the answers, or to point it's over there without letting them see you point?
When it comes to programming, there is no jumping in because I know nothing about it.
Okay.
But VEX is even more hands-off than FIRST. It is completely student-led, and
okay.
we kind of mind the lab, and the kids, we just tell them they have to figure it out. They have to look at the resources that we have available for them. They can ask questions, to other team members or other teams, whatever forums they're on. And again, look it up on YouTube or whatever, but yeah, it's on them. They do it completely. And with VEX this year, and all of the COVID restrictions, like the coaches, there was no spectators at any events, and the coaches were completely hands off from the students. We had to be completely separated from them. And they had to run their own, pits and, getting out to the field and stuff. It was completely on them. So as
I'm going to say, probably as seniors, it probably didn't affect you as much, that isolation. Daniel's like, no, I really don't need. He's got the head shake. No, but was there still that part of you where that's a quicker disconnect, and it's just different than what you've experienced in the past? I mean, not having fan participation, I would think, is a different feeling. Daniel?
Yeah, it's definitely weird not having basically the hype in the stands constantly going whenever you go up. But the biggest issue with the whole COVID thing was mainly just not knowing when we were going to arbitrarily get shut down and have to rework our plan for the next however long we were shut down. Right.
And you competed within the state of Michigan. Did you travel outside of Michigan for competitions too?
No.
Okay. So still within the state of Michigan, again, it's when might you get shut down? Did you just see an overall reduction in the number of events that happened in the state than you would normally have?
Definitely more towards the beginning. After probably the new year, stuff kind of started to open up more and people actually started hosting more events.
Okay.
But yeah, the first 3 or 4 months that we would have actually been like competing or meeting at the lab to build, there was like nothing on any of the schedules.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate. I mean, everybody has kind of had some way it's affected their life in doing those things. And those things we look to do for fun and relaxation, we always want to be able to do them. And unfortunately, we couldn't in this case. So it's been still a rewarding experience, I would imagine, throughout the season. I would like to find out from the team members if there's somebody who's kind of helped you along the way, that's, encouraged you to do something within robotics, or maybe it's kind of guided you towards what you might want to do. You're all seniors. What's the next level that you would like to do once you graduate from high school? So this is our shout out section. So we're going to start with ladies first again. Lily, we're going to let you go first. How about shout out?
I'll definitely shout out our Brandywine School District. They have been super helpful with the shutdown and letting us still come into the lab and work. And then I'll also thank my parents, my mom and dad. They were really supportive of me doing robotics. Nobody else in my family has ever. And I was the first, and they were all like, go ahead and go do it if it's what you want to do. So I'm thankful for all them.
Excellent. It's always safe to thank mom and dad. Madison, how about you?
We also want to thank one of our long-term sponsors, Camden's Appliances. They've been with us for a lot of years. And I also want to thank my parents, because this year was especially hard for them, not being able to go to competitions. And
yeah, parents, I've been at competitions. I mean, sporting events in general, parents sometimes are more into it than students, I think, but it's a good thing, so it's a difficult thing for them to miss out on that. You mentioned sponsors. We're going to continue on, but tell me what importance, sponsors, what do they give you? Is it just dollars? They give you materials? What is it that how they help you? Madison.
yeah, usually they just give us grants so we have money to buy more parts and be able to sign up for competitions, because there is an entrance fee for all of the competitions too.
And I would imagine then that eases your mind a little bit. Having the sponsors, you don't have to worry about, are we going to be able to do those things? Daniel, how about you? Some shout outs maybe?
A couple. One is for one of our sponsors, Lau Associates. The other one, probably one of the more major ones, is to our coaches for actually just letting us come in and keep doing all this. And then my parents, my mom being one of them, probably, like you said, being a bit more devoted sometimes than I am, but
yeah. She does it out of love. I'm sure of that. So Cheryl, how about you? Shout outs, as somebody who's trying to pull things together, shout outs that you may have.
Yeah, like I said, Marla Brennan and I both started a new nonprofit this year. It's called Robotics Zone of Michiana. And we took over this organization. It was an established organization, but we kind of had to revamp it all in the middle of COVID, and it wasn't easy. And, we've struggled with the sponsorships and grants and stuff this year, like I'm sure everyone has. Right. And the recruiting has been really hard. We can't get in the schools. And VEX, like I said, runs year round. We start up in August and we take 7th through 12th graders. So if anyone is interested, it plays well with first. We can, you can be on VEX and then you can transition to first and kind of be a part of both of those if you want. So anybody who's interested can reach out to us. Again, we're Robotics Zone of Michiana at gmail.com. And we're right here in Niles. We lost 2 first teams out of Niles the last year. And there is no VEX teams down in Southwest Michigan. So we would love to see this program grow.
Yeah, we'd love to see it. Any program, any opportunity where students get to work with mentors, they get to deal with science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and see it applied into the real world, the aha moment where it actually has application. That is, to me, that's the magic of all of this. And big or small, it doesn't matter. It's the going through that process. So tell me, guys, I've got maybe about 5 minutes or so left. I'm going to ask something that you've done in your world in robotics, your time with robotics, that you never would have expected to, or even as you were going through it, you're like, wow, this is not something I ever dreamed I would be doing. I'm going to start with you, Daniel, and we'll go around from there.
Probably one of the biggest things is traveling like majority of the country for competing for higher competition. We've been to the US Open in Iowa. We've been down to Worlds in Kentucky and all over Michigan for just regular competitions or state, which is usually up in Lansing.
So it's the travel and getting to meet other teams, I would imagine, in that travel.
Yeah, the whole dynamic of just the entire competition is so much more fun than I ever would have thought it would be.
Yeah, and it's building a network of all these people that you're going to have long-time contact with, hopefully. Lily, how about you?
I'm sorry, I forgot what you asked. I was distracted listening to Daniel.
Wow, Daniel, that's magic right there. So tell me something you were able to do in robotics that you didn't envision you would be able to do once you started.
So I did not think I would be programming. I thought I would be building the whole time, because originally when we started off, Madison was the one programming, and it was just a difficult transition to make because I am not tech savvy whatsoever, but here I am making our robot do some pretty cool things.
So tech savvy, you're more tech savvy than you really imagine. By being the programmer, you have to have some skill set to do that. So definitely take pride in that. And I didn't just say that because it's controls thing. Madison, how about you? Something that you've had the opportunity to do that you didn't ever think you would?
Like going through the competitions and stuff is just such a unique atmosphere, and I never thought that I would be able to experience something like that. And I've also met some of my best friends through this program.
Just building them up. Cheryl, I give you about a minute or so left. Tell me something you've seen the students do that they never thought they'd do, but you knew they would eventually get to that point.
I'd just say the growth emotionally that they have while they're in this program, seeing their character develop, seeing the friendships they build. To me, that's like the most important part of this. Kids can come here that have no idea how to build or program, and they can still find a place, and they're welcomed in. And we've got an awesome group of kids that just are willing to share their knowledge and help them along. And that's just an amazing thing to see with these students.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The one thing I really did miss this past summer was the opportunity to get together at Berrien County Youth Fair to do demo for people there, the mini maker fair. Those things will continue. We'll continue to bring more people in and get to see this. And I'm sure that your group will continue to continue to grow. These seniors will go on to do something else good in life and probably pay this forward with still being involved in some way, shape, or form. So I want to thank you guys for being here. I appreciate the time and educating me just a little bit more in the understanding of VEX and FIRST. And I still look at it as it's a great opportunity for students to work together with mentors and to continue to build on their own skill sets. So I want to thank you again for being here. Once again, 94.9 WSJM. It's Robotics Roundtable every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Please tune in to watch us next week. And to you guys, thanks a lot. Have a great night. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you for joining Robotics Roundtable on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM. If you missed any of today's discussion, you can check out the podcast at WSJM.com. Robotics Roundtable is supported by Berrien Springs Public Schools, together inspiring students to think, learn, achieve, and care in a global community. Cook Nuclear Plant. Explore careers at aep.com/careers. South Haven Public Schools, inspiring success in learning, leadership, and life. And Lakeshore Public Schools, supporting and offering STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Grounded in tradition, committed to excellence.